It's not unusual for families to have disagreements or face financial struggles. Despite this, some families manage to stay united and carry on with their daily routines. I don't think it's necessary to determine which type of family is happier. My name is Lily. Since childhood, I've been labeled as peculiar. I'm unsure what makes me odd. I only think of myself that way because others say so. Being called strange doesn't bother me, but my parents' avoidance due to this perception does. My childhood was marked by loneliness. I have an uncanny ability to sense what others are thinking, though I don't know how I do it. It's not that I could see or feel everything, but I couldn't understand why I had this ability. It felt as natural to me as moving hands or breathing does to most people. There was an instance when I sensed a malevolent emotion from a coworker my father had brought home. I felt a strong need to be wary of this person. I warned my mother, but she dismissed my concerns. Eventually, this coworker convinced my father to become a guarantor for a loan. My mother didn't believe my intuition, but as my father and the coworker were leaving, I mentioned that the terms joint and several sounded dangerous. I didn't fully grasp what it meant, but urged caution. Consequently, my father hesitated and decided against co-signing. When the coworker later went bankrupt and couldn't repay his debts, my father was spared from bearing the full financial burden. Another time, while out shopping with my mother, I sensed a wave of unease behind us. When I turned, I saw a man in sunglasses and a hat radiating that feeling of unease. "Mom, let's head that way and keep moving," I suggested, taking my mother's hand. We turned down a side street and she looked puzzled, wondering what was wrong. Just then, we heard a shout of, "I've been robbed," from the main street. The man I had sensed earlier had snatched a woman's bag right in front of us and fled. The woman, injured, collapsed. If we had stayed on the main sidewalk, my mother could have been the thief's target. Because such incidents occurred so often, my parents started seeing me as strange and peculiar. This led to a deep loneliness. What felt normal to me was not normal to others. As the odd and eerie child, I kept my thoughts to myself. Even when I sensed something was wrong, I stopped expressing it, fearing people would think I was crazy. I realized that by staying silent, I appeared like any other child, and no one would think I was strange. My younger sister, Sophie, is 3 years younger than me. She is an ordinary child, unlike me. While I grew increasingly withdrawn over the years, my sister became more adorable and charming. She received the love and attention from our parents that I did not. My parents favored my younger sister over me. Sophie is a charming young girl, while Lily is seen as dark and shadowy. Despite no longer voicing my unusual thoughts, the label of being an odd child stuck with me. I didn't stop having strange feelings or insights. I simply learned to keep them to myself. I pretended to be normal to survive, exhausted by the pain this ability caused and trying hard to control it. I grew up without my parents' love. Whether it was because my efforts to seem normal made me appear even more unusual, or because the strange image attached to me was unshakable, I can't say. In contrast, my younger sister was showered with our parents' affection. Sensing their coldness and slight distance from me, she began to look down on me. She would say, "I don't like being around my sister because her darkness rubs off on me." She saw herself as attractive and believed I negatively impacted her image. She started to put me down at every opportunity. My parents merely tolerated her behavior and did not attempt to correct her. When I was in my 2nd year of junior high, and my sister Sophie was in her 5th year of elementary school, she was approached by a scout from a local entertainment production company. They invited her to join their agency, and she confidently declared, "Of course it's because I'm attractive. They said I could be on television." My younger sister was already considering a career that pleased our parents. Concerned, I advised her, You should take it slow and think about it. I have a bad feeling about this. I didn't want her to encounter any trouble, so I shared my hidden feelings. Unaware of my unusual ability, she retorted, "Are you criticizing me because you're not attractive and can't communicate with others as well as I can? Stop being strange and don't interfere." Her face reddened with anger as she reached for me. My parents, who either forgot about my ability or were too thrilled about their younger daughter's potential stardom, sided with her and accused me. This experience reaffirmed my decision to stay silent. I realized that speaking up would bring no good. One day, a student teacher was scheduled to visit my middle school. He was a male college student, aspiring to be a physical education teacher. He delivered an inspiring speech about his educational dreams, quickly becoming popular with both teachers and students, especially the female students. As he engaged with the enthusiastic female students, I felt a wave of dread wash over me. Despite my rule to keep my abilities hidden, I couldn't ignore the danger my classmates might be in. I approached a teacher who seemed likely to understand. "I know this is unexpected, but please believe me and help me," I pleaded. The teacher was puzzled by my abrupt statement, but he followed my request and kept watch at a specific location after school. I didn't share the details because I knew he wouldn't believe me. Despite the lack of explanation, he listened and acted on my word. Perhaps he was more insightful than he appeared. The next day, the school was in an uproar. The student trainee had violated the nuisance prevention ordinance. The teacher had staked out near the women's restroom and caught the trainee entering it. Within 15 minutes, the trainee set up a video camera. Thanks to the teacher's intervention, the female students were spared from being victims of humiliation. Meanwhile, my younger sister enthusiastically joined the entertainment agency that scouted her. However, there were no lessons or auditions, just costly affiliation and lesson fees. One day, the agency abruptly closed, revealing it was a scam. My sister was devastated and turned her rage on me, screaming, "It's all because of you. You ruined my future. It's entirely your fault." Her accusation was absurd, but she seemed to believe it completely. This belief might have been her way of coping, but for me, it was disastrous. My parents didn't say such ridiculous things, but they did notice that she was distancing herself from me and leaning toward our younger sister. As a strange child, I was once again destined to experience loneliness. Although I was glad to have helped everyone at school, I worried that my actions would further isolate me. The next day, the teacher who had listened to my story called me to the staff room. I opened the door, anxious about being labeled as strange once more. "You knew something like that was going to happen about a week ago, didn't you?" the teacher asked me quietly. Realizing it was pointless to deceive him, I revealed my mysterious power. "There aren't many people like that out there," I added. For the first time, I felt understood. The teacher explained that he knew someone with my level of ability, which is why he believed me. "That person is my aunt, and I've known about her abilities for a long time. I understand you have a lot on your mind. I'm sure you'll feel much better if you get advice from someone in your situation." After saying this, the teacher introduced me to her. She looked into my eyes and said, "It's natural to be concerned, but you don't have to suffer." Her kind yet piercing eyes seemed to see everything, drawing me in. Her name was Sarah. The teacher told me that she had possessed the same power since childhood and had spent her life troubled in hiding it. The story of the older person who had gone through similar experiences to mine helped release me from my fears and doubts. My interaction with Sarah began on that day. I called her my mentor, but she laughed and said, "Will you not call me that?" Sarah, or rather my mentor, changed my life. I had lived a modest, shadowy existence, concealing who I was, but my perspective transformed. Gradually, I was able to live my daily life as a normal girl. However, Since the incident with the entertainment agency, I have been unable to get close to my sister. We seem to be drifting further apart. It was typical for her to ignore me, and when she did speak to me, it was usually to complain or make fun of me. I never knew what triggered these shifts. My psychic abilities failed to predict my sister's emotional changes. She used to say things like, "What's the big deal about you getting accepted to college? Aren't you just living in a fantasy world?" My sister had failed the entrance exam for her first choice high school, one she was told she would pass. She ended up enrolling in what she considered a second choice school. As a result, she was furious when I was accepted to her top choice university. I wasn't happy about her situation, and I certainly wasn't bragging to her. She simply made assumptions and disrespected me. My parents comforted and coddled my sister during her difficult times, telling me to stay away and not bother her. Despite having grown and improved since meeting Sarah, my sister still didn't seem to like me. I guess she only likes me when I'm the dark and gloomy inferior one, I thought bitterly. On the other hand, my sister is incredibly intelligent. It was surprising that she didn't pass the high school entrance exam, but she channeled her frustration into her studies at the school she enrolled in. As a result, she became the top student for 3 years and secured admission into a prestigious national university on her first attempt. "I got into the toughest university. Yours doesn't even compare," she proudly declared. I responded lightly, "Yeah, I guess so." I knew getting too involved would only lead to disaster. My sister, however, interpreted my casual remark as an affront to her brilliance and lashed out at me with all her might. My parents were afraid of my sister's temper outbursts, which left them watching helplessly whenever she spiraled. They blamed me for these episodes, labeling me as the troubled daughter. I wanted to argue with them about who truly fit that description, but I held my tongue. I needed to keep the peace at home, especially with my college years coming to a close and crucial life decision looming. While I've grown less withdrawn over time, I still struggle with sociability and doubt my ability to form successful relationships. My unique ability to sense people's negative emotions has heightened my sensitivity to negativity, often overwhelming me. In school, I've been buffeted by these swirling emotions, which have made me wary of trusting others. Concerned about how I might fare in a corporate environment, I sought guidance from my mentor. I was certain she had faced similar challenges and wanted to learn how she had overcome them. She shared, "I've navigated those same difficulties myself. Perhaps you should consider a path like mine." She explained that she had spent years as a fortune teller and counselor, using her abilities to help others with their problems. "Working freelance allows me to fully utilize my skills and contribute meaningfully to others without being tied to an organization. It's an ideal role for people like us who struggle with managing emotions and relationships." Encouraged by my mentor, I decided to pursue the same line of work she had chosen. She taught me the ropes and how to find clients, leveraging the opportunities offered by the internet to work from home. When I informed my parents and younger sister that I would be working from home instead of seeking a traditional job after graduation, their reaction was predictable. "What exactly is this job? What kind of work will you be doing? At the very least, you should contribute to household chores. How will you manage living expenses?" While I anticipated their concerns about the nature of my work and the financial implications, I was disappointed by their lack of support. Even though I understood their expectations regarding household responsibilities and financial contributions, it still saddened me. I could foresee my sister's disrespect increasing, which added to my distress. And so, my journey as a work-from-home professional began. Initially, there were no immediate job offers, and it was a process of trial and error. With guidance from my mentor, I gradually secured contracts and clients. Despite my father's insistence that I contribute financially to the household, I focused my energy on managing household chores. While my father remained displeased, My mother was relieved to see things becoming easier, and she mediated between us. When I finally made a financial contribution to the household after about a year, my father teased me, saying, "So, you finally earned some money, huh?" Despite contributing financially, the division of household chores between my father and me remained unchanged, leaving my daily life unaffected. 2 years later, my sister graduated from university and secured a position at a foreign-affiliated company, where she enjoyed a generous salary. Unlike my sister, who now works outside the home, I do not belong to the elite workforce. She mocks my work-from-home setup, stating, "What exactly do you do working from home? Isn't that just for fun? You're a freeloader in your own home. I'll be making 10 times more than you soon enough. Someone like you could never earn that much," she taunts, having been promoted to a managerial role within a year and a half at her company. While my sister boasts about her high salary, she contributes nothing to household responsibilities. Laundry, cooking, and other chores are left entirely to my mother and me. Though my mother delegates most tasks to me, I end up bearing the brunt of the workload. "Sophie, you should take more responsibility for yourself. Instead of spending everything on yourself, consider contributing to the household," I suggested to her once. In response, she dismissed me with, "You're just a burden, sister. You should handle all the housework. I'm saving for my future." For reasons beyond my comprehension, she consistently disregards me. My parents tactfully side with her, citing that she's my sister and implying there's little that can be done. I was content in my familiar work-from-home job, but I started questioning my plans. Then, my sister dropped a bombshell. "I'm getting married." The sudden announcement stunned both my parents and me. "He's a wealthy man earning over $10 million per year," she added proudly, catching us off guard. "Well, I'm happy for you, sister. But isn't marriage just a fantasy for someone like you?" I couldn't help but remark, taken aback by the news. Soon after, she brought her boyfriend home. The following Sunday, amidst our bewildered state, the young man arrived dressed impeccably in a suit and tie. "My name is John. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I've come to propose to Sophie." He greeted us with dignity and politeness. "I told you he's wonderful, isn't he? I'll be happy with him," Sophie exclaimed with joy. Despite my father's awe at John's presence, he managed to ask, "John, what do you do?" "I'm currently undergoing training at a company owned by my father's friend," John replied, prompting Sophie to explain tearfully. "His father is the president of the company. John is training outside the company to succeed him in the future." My sister radiated happiness at the thought of marrying the future president of a company. We engaged in polite conversation with John before he bravely departed. Despite some lingering gaps in our discussion, my parents seemed genuinely pleased with the impressive young man. John, youthful and vibrant, cast an indescribable shadow of darkness upon me. As someone sensitive to such feelings, I couldn't remain silent, fearing this darkness might bring unhappiness to my sister. "Listen, Sophie. You've only been with him for less than 3 months. You should get to know him better before deciding on marriage," I urged, my instincts urging caution. "What are you talking about, sister? He's a distinguished man, a potential president. You're just jealous because you can't compare to my happiness." "You're pitiful," Sophie retorted sharply, echoed by our parents urging me to step aside for such a wealthy future son-in-law. It was clear. My parents' plan was for their daughter to marry into wealth and secure their peace in old age. Anger churned in my mind as I couldn't reveal the looming darkness to my sister. They became engaged, and a meeting between our families followed. My sister's fiancé's parents exuded the same refreshing air as John, yet hidden behind them lurked the same ominous clouds, I noted, but the wedding day arrived before I could voice my concerns to my excited family. "You know, the company president is attending the reception today. Do you grasp how esteemed and promising my future is? It's an honor, But you, my homebound sister, wouldn't understand, Sophie said dismissively before leaving. As always, her words stung with disrespect. They exchanged vows of eternal love in the hotel's wedding hall and entered the reception with my sister beaming. Meanwhile, I watched with concern, wondering how long her happiness would endure. As usual, she managed to throw in a few disrespectful remarks. I thought to myself as they exchanged vows of eternal love in the hotel's wedding hall and proceeded to the reception. My sister beamed with happiness, her smile radiant, while I watched with concern, wondering how long this happiness would endure. The company president will be giving a speech as the guest of honor, my sister announced proudly. It was a congratulatory speech that naturally praised her, leaving her delighted. After the speeches concluded, drinks and appetizers were served at each table. The food looked delicious, but I began feeling increasingly uneasy. Initially, I assumed there was a delay, but other tables were already receiving their drinks and hors d'oeuvres one after another. It was odd. I was the only one not being served. The others at my table also noticed and started to feel uncomfortable. At that moment, my sister leaned in close, laughing into my ear. "Free food isn't meant for people like you. This food is too good for you. You should just go home and snack on potato chips. Just leave our wedding gift and go." I was stunned by her audacity, her words ringing loudly in my ear. The groom chuckled and nodded approvingly from his seat. Even my parents initially feigned surprise, but when they chimed in with comments like, "Well, Sophie has a point," I was not just surprised, but seething with anger. "I never imagined you would condone such behavior, Mom and Dad. This is too much. How can you accept such rudeness?" I exclaimed bitterly, receiving only a stern look from my parents in response. "Fine, I'll go home, but mark my words, you'll regret this." The hall erupted into a frenzy of murmurs and gasps as a man's voice pierced through the tension. "What's with that threat? I wonder if it's the howl of a loser," he proclaimed, his words cutting through the air with an edge of disdain. He stood abruptly, commanding attention with his stark declaration. "I'm the groom's brother. My name is David," he announced boldly, his tone laced with a mix of anger and disbelief. "My brother and parents are scum, but the bride is even more so. I can't take it." David's unexpected outburst sent shockwaves through the gathering, leaving everyone stunned and uncertain of what would happen next in the unfolding drama. As David's accusations reverberated through the hall, the atmosphere became charged with tension and disbelief. "Father, your company went bankrupt half a year ago, and you're still falsely claiming to be the president of it," David continued, his voice cutting through the shocked murmurs of the guests. "The fact that you are still pretending to be the president of this company must mean that you are trying to take advantage of your daughter-in-law and her family." His words hung heavily in the air, casting a shadow over the previously joyous occasion. The buzz of conversation intensified as guests exchanged whispers, trying to comprehend the sudden turn of events. "And John, you can't be president anymore either, but you're still faking it and trying to sleaze off your wife, aren't you? Because you are unemployed now." David's accusations targeted John, the groom, directly, further stirring up the already charged atmosphere. Amidst the chaos, the younger sister, Sophie, erupted in fury. "What do you mean you cheated me? What do you mean you're unemployed?" Her voice trembled with anger and confusion, her face flushed red, then paling to a pallid blue as tears welled in her eyes. Meanwhile, my parents, caught off guard and overwhelmed by the unfolding drama, added to the event with their outbursts. The hall echoed with the pathetic screams and cries of my family, drowning out any attempt at reconciliation or explanation. At that moment, I remembered David's earlier confession and apology, understanding now why he had urged me not to hesitate if something went wrong during the reception. The truth had emerged, shattering the facade of happiness and exposing the deception that had threatened to undermine my sister's future. As the president of my sister's company intervened, his voice filled with anger and authority, the atmosphere in the reception hall shifted once more. His words cut through the tension like a knife. "Enough of this. It's not looking good. You have no right to blame the groom. What makes you think you have the right to criticize the groom's brother or his mistreatment of his brother?" The president's stern rebuke silenced the murmurs that had erupted following David's accusations. My sister, visibly startled by the president's unexpected intervention, listened intently as he continued, his gaze unwavering. "I didn't attend your ceremony for your sake. If you weren't Lily's sister, to whom I owe so much, I wouldn't be here." The mention of my name caught my sister off guard, her eyes widening in surprise. The president went on to praise me, citing my unconventional career path and the impact I had made in the business world. "Lily has saved numerous companies from the crisis," the president declared, his tone respectful and admiring. "She is like a goddess among us business owners." He elaborated on my journey from being a fortune teller and life consultant under my mentor's guidance to becoming an advisor for corporate revitalization. Despite lacking formal managerial training, I leveraged my unique abilities to guide companies towards successful turnarounds. "I have used my powers to show the company the way it should go," the president emphasized, underscoring the effectiveness of my unconventional methods. I was right on target, and one after another, the companies that turned to me revitalized their corporate strategy, experiencing amazing recoveries. The hall fell silent, absorbing the president's unexpected praise and the revelation of my contributions. My parents, who had been caught in the turmoil of the moment, looked on with a mix of surprise and pride. My sister, initially taken aback by the sudden turn of events, now seemed to reassess the situation with a newfound perspective. The president's words not only defended me but also highlighted my achievements, contrasting sharply with the earlier chaos and accusations. It was a moment that shifted the narrative, casting a different light on the unfolding drama and prompting reflection among those present. The aftermath of the wedding was a disaster, marked by misunderstandings and revelations that unraveled the facade of my sister's marriage. As the chaos settled, it became clear that my sister had been unaware of many crucial details, including financial matters and the true source of household contributions. She said, "Oh no, I didn't know anything about that. Aren't you a stay-at-home nobody? Thanks to you, I have a good job and now earn more than you do. I put enough money into the house, but my parents don't care about me, and I have contributed so much to our house." My sister's outburst revealed her misconceptions about our family's dynamics and financial contributions. The revelation that the money she believed she had contributed to the household was actually from my earnings further complicated the situation. It highlighted the disconnect between her perceptions and the reality of our family's support dynamics. The parents seemed to have misunderstood. There was no way she could have brought money into the house. The confusion and misunderstandings only deepened, exacerbating the tension among family members. The dissolution of the wedding and the refunding of gifts underscored the abrupt end to what was supposed to be a joyous occasion, now marred by deceit and financial strain. Besides, I had relied on John's income and signed a contract for a condominium in my name. I can't pay the rent by myself if I'm unemployed. The revelation that my sister had signed a lease for a condominium based on John's income, which she could no longer afford alone, added another layer of distress to her predicament. John's callous response to her distress signaled the dissolution of their relationship and the harsh reality of their failed marriage. To the sobbing sister, John said, "You signed the contract on your own, didn't you? I don't know anything about it. Divorce, 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 you crook." John's dismissive and accusatory words further shattered any remnants of their relationship, leaving my sister to face the fallout and the legal implications of their separation. The wedding turned out to be a mess. This was also the result of his malice towards others for no reason at all. He might have claimed that he had a reason to be malicious, but no way would have passed muster. Reflecting on the chaos that ensued, it was clear that John's actions had precipitated the collapse of the wedding and the subsequent turmoil. His motives, whether driven by malice or deception, underscored the gravity of the situation and its impact on everyone involved. Later, the younger sister divorced John and demanded alimony. Ultimately, my younger sister chose to divorce John, seeking redress through alimony to navigate the financial repercussions of their short-lived marriage. The aftermath of the wedding served as a stark reminder of the consequences of rushing into relationships and the importance of clarity and honesty in all aspects of life. The aftermath of the wedding and its fallout was severe for my younger sister. The financial implications and the damage to her reputation created a challenging situation that she struggled to overcome. There was no way that John, who was unemployed, and his parents could afford to pay a large amount of alimony. And although they were barely able to pay for the wedding hall, it was nowhere near enough to cover the cost of the condo they had contracted for. The house that was to become their love nest was canceled without ever being lived in. The financial strain became evident when it was clear that John and his family could not fulfill the financial obligations my sister expected, including alimony and the condominium lease. The dream of a shared home was shattered before it began, leaving my sister burdened with the loan she had taken out. The financial burden of the unpaid loan weighed heavily on my sister, adding to her stress and challenges. Despite the dissolution of the marriage, she was left with the financial aftermath that she had not anticipated. In addition, the outrageous behavior at the wedding spread quickly among the company officials who were present, and the sister lost credibility. The scandalous events at the wedding tarnished my sister's reputation among her colleagues and superiors. The behavior and revelations at the event cast a shadow on her professionalism and credibility, impacting her standing in the company where she had been seen as an elite employee. My sister's career took a hit, and she found herself relegated to a less prestigious role within her company. The work became mundane, and her prospects seemed uncertain. The president of the company gave up on her and sent her to a lower position. She had no place at the company and lost her pride as an elite employee. John and his parents failed in their attempt to become parasites on my younger sister. They too are struggling to make ends meet by working day jobs. Their attempt to benefit from my sister's financial stability backfired. Now they also struggle to support themselves through ordinary jobs, their illusions shattered. Naturally, the older brother David had separated himself from his parents and younger brother, likely due to their actions and behaviors during and after the wedding debacle. He chose a different path, free from their influence. My parents had easily given up on my sister when it hit rock bottom, and they came to me. But I said, I don't want to be pushed around by you guys anymore. I'm going to cut you off. Goodbye. Faced with my parents seeking support after abandoning my sister, I made a decisive choice to break free from their control and dependence. I moved out, rented a new apartment, and started afresh. With that declaration, I left home, signed a lease on a new apartment, and began a new life. I took in my sister, who had fallen on hard times, and began to have trouble making ends meet. My sister's salary had been drastically reduced, and she could not afford to put any money into our parents' house. Naturally, I also stopped the money I had been putting into my parents' house. My business is going well, and I am positively helping many companies and people. And to tell the truth, I started dating David after the wedding incident, and he recently asked me to go out with him. During these changes, my career as a fortune teller and consultant blossomed. I found fulfillment in helping others, and my relationship with David grew stronger. We're now considering marriage, looking forward to a future built on trust and mutual respect. With David, I found a partner who embodies honesty and sincerity, qualities that promise a bright and stable future. Together, We're aiming to create a life filled with happiness and positivity, leaving behind the shadows of the past.
All right, everyone's presentations are done, Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick, is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.